Okay, today I want to give you some thoughts about homeschooling, especially in those younger years. Sometimes you just feel like you're a cheerleader and you're doing everything you can to engage your children in the academics. I want to give you some thoughts that might help you understand those early years and what would be most beneficial. Welcome to my channel, Learning with Boys. My name is Rachel. I am a homeschool mom of 4 boys. I have graduated too. And this school year, I have a middle schooler and high schooler. So I am going to go back a little bit further and talk about some things and how we did some things in the early homeschool years. And I hope to be encouragement to you, really whatever stage you're in. I do enjoy doing homeschool videos, past and present. So if you enjoy homeschool videos, I would love for you to join us by subscribing. And if this video is helpful, please give it a thumbs up. So I just want to talk about a couple things first, and before I get into some ideas that we have done to really engage your younger children into having a desire to understand and enjoy different subjects. One thing that, especially in the younger years, that I personally struggled with was comparison. I feel like that's a little bit of a norm for beginning homeschool parents, that there's this certain level or standard that you feel like you have to hit to qualify, and your children need to be a certain way and do certain things, and you have to use a certain curriculum. But really, in the end, that can be such a discouragement for you as the parent and for the children themselves, because there's a lot of pressure put on both of us. So I really had to overcome that and let that go in the early years and really just enjoy where my children were at and homeschooling them. And that brings me to another important thought to keep in mind with younger children. And that is, first of all, that they're really not going to wrap their mind around certain subjects at the same level you are. And we really have to remind ourselves of that. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't teach a certain subject. I think that is just an introductory stage that the children are in, and they need to be introduced to certain things. But we can't expect them to see things through the eyes of someone that has experienced life when they're just beginning out. So keep that in mind. And also their attention span. I know as adults, we struggle with that a little bit. So be sensitive to their needs in that area. I know I have given this example before in my videos, that for children and their attention span is that if you use, for example, say you have a 7-year-old and you're working on math, and you could double their age, which would be 14 or 15, and that would be minutes. So that is about as long as they're really going to be in full attention of maybe learning a new concept and doing their schoolwork. Now, you might be able to stretch it to 20 minutes if you're including the actual schoolwork also. So you really, if you're teaching a new concept, you want to get into it and you want to get it done at the beginning and let them do a few problems to make sure that they understand. So if you have a kindergartner, if you think about it, that teaching time or that attention span really isn't going to take up a lot of your day. Now, is there still learning going on? Of course. And that is what I want to talk about, because really the sit down academic work should not take that long in the elementary years. But children are soaking in and learning so much other things throughout the day. So as I mentioned earlier, those early years are just going to be the introduction years. You're going to be introducing math, of course, phonics and writing and learning to read. You'll start to introduce such things as science and history and health, maybe gardening, talking about food. As they get a little bit older in the upper elementary into middle school, they're going to be so familiar with these things that they can recall them and probably explain them to other people. And by the time they're in high school, they're ready to logically discuss these things and write papers. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea that you want those early years are just the introduction years. And it is helpful if the curriculum you're using is engaging. And I know many times we may, like example for science, we may have veered off a little bit here and there. We used a curriculum, maybe that was appropriate for even kindergarten through 3rd grade, but I always added in things. And one thing I for sure added in was books. They would ask questions. I wanted them to think visually what they could see. Now, again, they haven't lived life. They were not ready to wrap their mind around every little detail. But the important thing, especially in science, is to help them understand creation and the power of God, and that everything that we see is His. So I remember working on the planets, and we would go through each planet and get different books, talk about what they were made of and where they were at in comparison to the Earth. And during that time, they were notebooking, but also we were doing a project. I decided to go ahead and do the solar system. Now, I just bought, I think it was like $9.99. I went ahead and bought the styrofoam. So you could maybe figure out how to do all that yourself in the different sizes, but this was already, they were just white styrofoam. So the boys still got to paint them. So as we studied the planets, we would paint the planets. And then in the end, we put it all together. But again, that was just an introduction to science for them to enjoy learning, for them to build that desire to learn more. Science can be a little bit easier to do things with your younger children because there's always like a little bit of an experiment, something you could do in the kitchen, something you can make. History is a little bit different. So I want to give you a little bit of thoughts there. Again, it's so important for kids to understand that history is His story. So really, we can start with the Bible. And remember, this is just the introduction. So you're sharing the truths of God's word and His story, but you can also add in things about American history. Along the way with each of those things that you teach them, you could do different projects. I remember one year, I just thought it would be fun for each boy to pick a president they were interested in reading a book about, and then we actually made outfits for them. And they enjoyed that so much because they got to pick something they were interested in and engage in it. Now, my boys have always actually enjoyed history. They like learning about different battles and what they wore during those battles. They like to go outside, even at a young age, and reenact in their little minds with each other, dig trenches and build forts. They like to have campfires like they were in the Civil War around the tents. And that is what I mean, that the learning is not over once they leave the table. They really will take what they have learned and they'll make their own experiences out of it. And that gives them a desire to learn more. I know when my boys have done that, and they'd want to, when we went to the library, they'd want to get books about military or books about maybe a certain president that maybe I have read a little bit about and they want to know more about. So it does draw their interest into learning more when you give them time to engage and use their imagination. So are you doing school just to check off the boxes, just making sure that all the requirements are hit for what they should know by that certain age? In those early years, you need to step aside from that a little bit. I know it's good to have some goals. It really is. So I'm not saying don't do school, don't have some sit down time to teach, but remember the attention span. You could say just 30 more minutes, but remember, if you have a very young child, that attention, you could just be speaking to the air. So you just have to be willing to say, that's okay, let's close the book, we'll work on it again tomorrow. Some other things that we did do, and this is definitely more work for the mom or for the parents, and that would be field trips. Even at a young age, we a lot of times would just maybe even plan our vacation. When we planned our vacation, make sure that there were sites or things that we could do as a family. And that is another thing when I did field trips with the boys, especially when they were younger, most of the time it was with Daddy. It was just so much easier, and it was something that he could do in the education realm with us. He also enjoyed learning about what they were learning about. So it really just gave us a time together. Now, that doesn't mean that we did not do field trips with friends, because my boys did have friends which they enjoyed being with. And they don't have to cost a lot. There's been times where we have just went to some battlefields or a reenactment, or there's a State Museum, not too far from us, that we've been to a few times. They've actually had a whole day where they had a Tennessee History Day, which was so fun when the boys were younger. When we went on vacation, we may have done extra things, like we may go to a cave. We have been to Luray Caverns in Virginia. There was also like a gold mine cave down in Georgia that we went to when the boys were younger, which was really neat. I think also when we're enthusiastic and excited about a subject, that really encourages them. At that age, they want to love what we love. They want to learn about what we enjoy learning about. And if they see that excitement in us as the parents, they will want to continue in that. Now, their own interest will grow from that, which is fun for us because being excited in what they want to learn. But all right, I just wanted to share these thoughts with you. Just engaging your children in learning, and not just at the table, but stepping away and just being creative, letting them use their imagination in what they have learned. So I hope this video was helpful and encouraging. I do appreciate you all watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. We'll talk to you again soon.